Kyle stood in front of the door marked Room 4B9, holding a small bag of his things and trying to stay positive. He had volunteered to join the interspecies peace program, and now he was finally on board the alien warship Valkyrian, surrounded by warriors from dozens of planets. The humans were new to this alliance, and Kyle felt lucky to be part of history. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Then he froze. The room was tiny, really tiny, maybe 3 meters across, barely enough for a single bed, a chair, and a locker. The ceiling was low, the lights dim, and there wasn't even a window. Kyle blinked. They said I'd have a personal space. This looks like a storage closet. He stepped inside, dropping his bag by the bed. He was just about to go ask someone if there was a mistake when the door slid open again. Someone entered. Someone very big. A tall alien woman stepped inside, ducking slightly as her armor brushed the frame. Her skin was a rich crimson color, and her long white hair was tied behind her head in a sharp braid. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were alert, like she was ready for battle at any moment. She looked down at him with a slight tilt of her head. "You are Kyle, human volunteer." Her voice was deep and strong, with a slight accent. "I am *** Tarala of the Core Empire. I will be sharing this room with you." Kyle blinked. "Wait, sharing? You're my roommate." "Yes." She walked past him without hesitation and placed her things on the floor. "This room was assigned to us both. That is the arrangement." Kyle looked around again. There was one bed, a small one. "This can't be right," he said. "There's only one bed. Where are you supposed to sleep?" Tarala raised an eyebrow. "On the bed, of course. You are small. I will take the top." "The top?" Kyle asked, confused. "Yes, the stacking method. Efficient and space-saving. Common in warrior dormitories." Kyle stared at her. Was she serious? This tall, powerful alien woman was planning to sleep on top of him. I don't think that's a good idea," Kyle said quickly. "I mean, you're kind of heavy." Tarala crossed her arms. "Do you doubt the strength of your bones, human?" No. This is really close. Personal space and all that. I do not need space to sleep. I need only stability and warmth." She walked toward the bed and sat on the edge, testing it with one hand. "This will do. We shall sleep as a tower." Kyle didn't know whether to laugh or panic. Was this some kind of joke? Was she messing with him? "Look, maybe we can take turns. Like, I sleep now, and you later." "No." Her answer was firm. "Warriors sleep at the same time to prepare for sudden battle. Rotation is not wise." Kyle sighed. This couldn't be real. Still, Tarala had already removed part of her armor and was lying down. She patted the space beside her. "Lie down, human. I will not crush you. Probably." Kyle didn't move. Tarala gave him a look, not angry, but serious. "I have no interest in harming you. This arrangement is based on logic, not feelings, unless you wish to sleep on the floor, which smells of engine oil." He glanced down. She was right. The floor didn't look very clean, and there wasn't enough space to stretch out anyway. Slowly, nervously, he lay down on the bed. She waited a moment, then gently settled herself on top of him. Her body was warm and surprisingly soft in some places. She adjusted herself so that most of her weight was centered safely, not pressing too hard. Her long braid rested on his shoulder. Kyle couldn't move much. He stared at the ceiling. "This is so weird," he muttered. "This is efficient," she replied. For a few minutes, they lay there in silence. Strangely, the room didn't feel so cold anymore. Her presence was like a heated blanket, firm and heavy, but not painful, just unfamiliar. Kyle yawned. Maybe he was more tired than he thought. Before long, he found his eyes getting heavy. Tarala spoke softly, her voice almost kind. "You are warm, human, and calm. This will be acceptable. Kyle gave a weak laugh. Glad to know I'm good for something. And then, despite everything, he slowly drifted off to sleep, with an alien warrior resting peacefully on top of him in the tiniest room on the ship. Kyle woke up with a strange feeling. Something heavy and warm was still on top of him. At first, he couldn't remember where he was. Then it all came back. The tiny room, the alien ship, and the tall warrior named Tarala who had claimed the only bed and decided to sleep on top of him. He opened one eye and looked up. Tarala was still resting, her head turned slightly to the side. Her long white braid tickled his neck, and her arm was draped across his chest, like she was guarding him in her sleep. Her breathing was calm and steady. He tried not to move too much. How did I fall asleep like this? He wondered. But surprisingly, he had slept better than expected. It was strange, but her weight had made him feel secure, like a heavy blanket that couldn't be kicked off. Suddenly, Tarala's eyes opened. They were sharp and alert in an instant. No grogginess, no blinking, just pure focus. "You are awake," she said, lifting herself off him with ease. Your breathing changed. Kyle sat up slowly. "Yeah. Good morning. Or whatever time it is on this ship." Tarala stood and stretched her arms. Her muscles flexed under her armor, and her voice was calm. "This arrangement is successful. You make a good base. I did not sink. Thanks, I think." He rubbed his back and looked at the small space around them. Still cramped, still one bed, still no privacy. "Is this really normal where you come from?" Kyle asked. "Just stacking bodies like pancakes." Tarala tilted her head slightly. "In the warrior academies of the core empire, space is rare. We learn to rest efficiently. Sharing warmth builds trust." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "So, this isn't weird to you at all?" "No, this is practical." Kyle sighed. "Well, I guess I better get used to it." They dressed and left the room together for breakfast in the shared dining area. Many different aliens sat at long tables, some with 3 eyes, some with tails, others with insect-like legs. Kyle felt out of place among them, but Tarala walked beside him like a mountain of calm power. At the food line, Kyle tried to pick something familiar. He ended up with a bowl of gray noodles and a glowing green fruit. "What is this?" he whispered. "Fuel paste with protein strings," Tarala said, placing something that looked like a rock on her tray. "Eat. You will need strength." They sat at a corner table. Kyle tried to eat without making a face. The fruit tasted like soap. The noodles were chewy and salty. "So," he asked, "do you always get assigned to humans?" "No. You are my first. I requested this mission." Kyle looked surprised. "Really? Why?" Tarala paused for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "My sister fought in the First Contact War," she said. "She believed humans were clever, brave, and kind. She died before peace came. I wished to know if her words were true." Kyle's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your sister. She died with honor." Tarala's eyes stayed steady. "If you are like her stories, then perhaps humans and core can be true allies." Kyle nodded slowly. "I'll try not to disappoint her memory." They finished their meal and headed to their first task, a safety orientation and translator sync check. The officer leading it, a strict-looking alien with purple skin and 6 arms, frowned when he saw Kyle and Tarala sitting next to each other. "Room 4B9, correct?" he asked. "Yes," Tarala answered. The officer made a note. "Still only 1 bed in that room. That issue has not been fixed." Kyle raised a hand. "Actually, we've worked it out." The officer gave him a confused look. "You have?" Tarala nodded firmly. "Yes, we sleep stacked. It is efficient." The officer blinked. "Very well." Kyle turned red as the others in the room looked over. Some laughed quietly. A few looked impressed. Tarala didn't seem to notice or care. Later that evening, Kyle returned to the room first. He sat on the bed, thinking about the day. Strange food, alien officers, and now a roommate who believed sleeping on top of someone was totally normal. The door slid open, and Tarala stepped in. She removed her armor piece by piece, placing it in a neat pile. "You look thoughtful," she said. Kyle chuckled. "Just getting used to this new life." She nodded. "It will become easier. You adapt quickly." He laid back on the bed and sighed. "So you're gonna climb on again?" Tarala walked over and stood beside him. "I told you, it is the most efficient use of space." She carefully settled over him, warm and steady, like the night before. After a pause, he added, "Also, you are comfortable." Kyle blinked, surprised by the soft tone in her voice. "Thanks, I guess." And with that, the strange pair drifted into sleep again, stacked like puzzle pieces in a too-small room on a massive alien ship, beginning a bond neither of them fully understood yet. The next few days aboard the Valkyrian were anything but quiet. Kyle quickly realized that living with an alien warrior was not just about sharing a bed. It was about learning a whole new way of life. Every habit, every routine, even the smallest things, were completely different from what he was used to. One morning, Kyle woke up to loud, rhythmic sounds echoing from the corner of the room. His eyes blinked open, and he saw Tarala standing with one arm raised and the other beating her chest. She was chanting something in her native language, her voice deep and powerful. Kyle sat up, startled. Are you okay?" Tarala turned her head slightly. "Warrior's morning ritual. It focuses the mind and strengthens the soul." "Right. Got it. Very loud, though." She didn't apologize. Instead, she continued for another minute, then lowered her arms and finally relaxed. Kyle rubbed his face. "On Earth, we usually start the day with quiet music. Or coffee. Definitely not chest pounding and shouting." "You may try it," Tarala said seriously. "It will make your heart stronger." "I think I'll stick with brushing my teeth." As they prepared for the day, Kyle noticed another difference. While he used water to clean his face and freshen up, Tarala stood under a heat emitter that blasted warm air across her body. "That thing looks like a hairdryer on steroids," Kyle muttered. "It removes moisture and dirt through focused energy," she explained. "Water is used only for battle wounds or rare ceremonies." "So, no showers?" Kyle asked, surprised. Tarala raised an eyebrow. "I have never used one." Kyle smiled. "Wow, you don't know what you're missing." Later that afternoon, they both attended a training session together. While Kyle was only supposed to observe, Tarala insisted he at least try the basic forms of alien defense. "Learning is strength," she said. "You must not be soft forever." Kyle wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. They entered the training hall, which was full of warriors from many species, tall, armored, scaled, and even some with glowing patterns on their skin. Kyle, in his simple jumpsuit, felt small and very human. Tarala stood behind him, giving instructions. "Hold your arms higher." "No, not like a bird. Like a shield." "I've never done this before," Kyle replied. "Then learn faster." With her help, he managed a few simple moves, though he nearly tripped twice and dropped a practice baton on his own foot. Still, Tarala nodded once. Clumsy, but not useless. "I'll take that as progress." As they left the training hall, Kyle was sweating and sore. Tarala walked beside him, calm and unbothered as usual. "I think I pulled something," Kyle groaned. "You will adapt." Back in their small room, Kyle flopped onto the bed. Tarala sat on the floor and began polishing her armor with a sharp tool. He watched her for a moment. "Hey," he said, "can I ask something?" She glanced at him. "Yes. Why are you always so serious? Do core warriors ever laugh? Or have fun?" Tarala paused. "Fun is not weakness, but we are trained to focus on honor and duty first. So no movies, games, or telling jokes. She thought for a second. There are battle songs with humorous parts, and sometimes, during long patrols, we make small bets. I once lost a week of cooking duty after guessing wrong on a star reading. Kyle smiled. Now that's something I want to hear more about. As the night came, the room once again felt too small. Tarala began removing her armor pieces while Kyle turned away, trying to give her a little privacy, even though there wasn't much space to offer it. Then came the usual part. Tarala stood by the bed. Ready? Kyle sighed, lying flat. As I'll ever be. She carefully settled herself on top of him, just like before. But this time, it felt a little less strange. You were less stiff today, she said. Your balance improved. Thanks, Kyle replied. You weren't so bad either. Not that I expected you to fall on your face. I never fall. I noticed. A moment of quiet passed. Then Kyle added, back on Earth, people would think this is really weird. Tarala blinked. Why? Because most people don't sleep stacked like chairs, or train with warriors, or share rooms with 7-foot-tall aliens. She considered that. Perhaps humans have much to learn. Or maybe we just have different ways of living, Kyle said with a soft smile. Tarala didn't reply right away. But after a moment, she said, Your way is not all wrong. I do not hate it. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but it was the closest she had come to one. As the lights dimmed and the room fell into silence, Kyle closed his eyes with a slight grin. Day by day, this strange living arrangement was turning into something else, something he didn't fully understand yet, but didn't want to give up either. Kyle's life aboard the Valkyrian had taken a strange turn, but he was slowly getting used to the daily routine with Tarala. What had once seemed like an awkward living situation was beginning to feel almost normal. Sure, their room was cramped, and Tarala still slept on top of him at night, but he wasn't complaining as much anymore. The mornings were still filled with loud warrior chants and strange alien rituals, but Kyle had learned to adapt. Tarala's early training routines had become a part of the daily rhythm, and somehow it all felt natural. That morning, as Kyle stretched and rubbed his eyes, Tarala was already standing at the door, waiting for him. We train today, she said, her voice calm but firm. I will teach you more about combat. You need strength. Kyle groaned and sat up in bed. I think I'm already sore from yesterday's session. Can't we take it easy today? No, she answered simply, turning on her heel. We train. Strength is earned, not given. Kyle followed her out of the room, still rubbing his sore muscles. I'm starting to feel like I signed up for a military boot camp instead of a peace mission. Tarala didn't respond. She simply led him to the training hall again, her large, powerful frame cutting through the hallways like she was built for battle. Kyle, on the other hand, had never been much of a fighter. He had spent most of his life behind a desk, working in a small office. The idea of learning to fight, especially from someone like Tarala, was a little intimidating. When they entered the training hall, Kyle noticed that the alien warriors around them were already practicing with weapons, blades, shields, and energy staffs. Some of them were moving gracefully, like dancers, while others were brute forces of nature, lifting heavy training tools with ease. Tarala walked toward a small section, where the more basic training equipment was stored. Today, you will learn how to defend yourself, she said, picking up a training baton. If you cannot fight, you will always be weak. Kyle was about to protest, but he swallowed the words. He had promised to try, and this was part of that promise. Tarala handed him a baton. It was heavier than he expected, and he nearly dropped it on his foot. Start with basic stances, she instructed, demonstrating how to hold the weapon in both hands. Kyle mimicked her stance, but the baton wobbled in his grip. I don't think I'm built for this kind of thing. You are human, Tarala replied, her voice low and steady. You have potential, Strength does not come from size, but from will. Kyle gritted his teeth and adjusted his grip. I'll try. For the next hour, Tarala guided him through basic movements, strikes, blocks, and jabs. Each move felt awkward at first, his arms and legs not used to the fluid motions. He stumbled, he tripped, and more than once, he found himself on the floor, gasping for air. Not bad, Tarala said when he finally landed a half-decent block against her baton. But you still move like a newborn. Kyle chuckled through his panting. Well, I didn't exactly sign up to be a warrior. Tarala eyed him carefully. You may not be a warrior, but you are a human. And humans are capable of things that other species cannot even imagine. Is that why you volunteered to be here? Kyle asked, surprised by her words. Tarala paused, her grip tight on her baton. I volunteered because my sister believed in the strength of humans. She believed that if we were to ever truly unite the galaxy, we needed humans. You are not weak, Kyle. You just have to realize it. Kyle felt the weight of her words. There was something deeper behind her usual serious demeanor, something personal. He hadn't expected the warrior to be so passionate about peace and unity. He had assumed that, like many of the other aliens aboard the ship, she only cared about duty and combat. They spent another hour in the training hall, and though Kyle was exhausted, he could feel a slight improvement. He wasn't exactly skilled, but he wasn't terrible either. And that was enough for him. For now. As the session ended, Tarala put the baton down with a satisfied nod. You are getting better, human. Yeah, sure, I only fell 5 times today, Kyle joked. Tarala didn't smile, but her expression softened a little. Falling is part of the process. You will rise. Kyle rubbed his sore arms. Maybe, but I think I need a break. Agreed, she said. We will rest, but not yet. Tarala turned and walked toward the corner of the training hall, where a large, heavy piece of equipment rested. Kyle followed her, curious. Now we test your strength, she said, pointing to the massive weight. You must lift this. Kyle stared at the piece of equipment. It looked like a large, bulky training sled with weights stacked on top. Are you serious? That thing is huge. You will not need to lift it fully. Just move it. Push it. Strength comes in many forms. Kyle sighed. He didn't feel strong enough to even budge the machine. But Tarala was watching him closely, and he couldn't back down now. All right, he said. Here goes nothing. He placed his hands on the sled, trying to grip it with both hands. He strained with all his might, feeling his muscles protest. But to his surprise, the sled moved. Just a little. Enough to show that it was possible. Tarala watched, her eyes focused. You see, you are capable. You just need to believe. Kyle grinned, sweat dripping down his forehead. Okay, I'm starting to believe it. Tarala nodded approvingly. Good. Because if you do not, you will never survive. Kyle had learned many things during his time aboard the Valkyrian, but the most surprising lesson wasn't about combat. It wasn't about survival, either. It was about Tarala. They had been living in close quarters for weeks now, sharing a cramped room that had barely enough space for the two of them. And though Tarala was a warrior, strong, unshakable, and sometimes intimidating, Kyle had begun to see another side of her. She wasn't just a soldier. There was something more beneath her. One evening, after a long day of training, Kyle was lying on the bed, reading a small human book from Earth that he had managed to bring with him. It was an old story about pirates and treasure, something lighthearted to take his mind off the ship and its endless duties, the soft hum of the ship's engine, and the quiet chirps of the alien communication system were almost soothing. Tarala, as usual, was sitting on the floor, polishing her armor. But this time, Kyle noticed something strange. She was more distracted than usual. Her movements were slower, her eyes distant. He sat up. Hey, you okay? She didn't respond at first, but then she turned her head slightly, catching his gaze. I am fine. Kyle didn't believe her. He had seen the way she always held herself, like a mountain that could never be moved. But tonight, something was off. Toralla wasn't acting like herself. He set the book down and stood up, walking over to her. I've been living with you long enough to know when something's wrong. What's going on? Toralla hesitated. She placed her armor down carefully and finally spoke, her voice quieter than usual. I have an injury. Kyle frowned. An injury? Why didn't you say anything? I did not wish to seem weak, she replied. Warriors do not show weakness. Kyle sat next to her. You're not weak. Everyone gets hurt, and if you're hurt, you need help. Toralla's gaze shifted away from him. It is not a simple injury. It happened during my last mission. A blade struck me here. She pointed to her side, just beneath her ribs, where a faint scar was visible through her armor. Kyle frowned again, but this time with concern. You never told me. Why? Why hide it? It is not important, Toralla said quickly, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. I will heal. I always heal. Kyle gently placed a hand on her arm. It is important. You're my roommate, and you're my friend. I don't want you getting hurt more because you're too proud to ask for help. Toralla's expression softened, though she didn't look directly at him. I was taught to be strong, not to rely on others. Kyle shook his head. That's not how it works. You don't have to do everything alone. People, humans, especially, are better when they help each other. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, in a quiet voice, she spoke again. My sister believed in you. In humans. Kyle blinked, not expecting her to bring up something so personal. Your sister? Yes, Toralla answered softly. She died in battle, long before the peace treaty. She always said that humans were not weak, that you would be the ones to bring balance to the galaxy. Kyle was silent for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. I'm sorry about your sister. She died with honor, Toralla said, her voice steady now. But before she died, she said something to me. She told me that I should never forget the human spirit. She said that no matter what I faced, I should remember that humans would never give up, even when everything seemed impossible. Kyle sat still for a moment, letting the gravity of her words sink in. He hadn't realized that Toralla had so much riding on the human race. It was humbling. She wasn't just some warrior following orders. She was carrying the memory of her sister and her belief in humanity's strength. You don't have to carry that all on your own, Kyle said softly. We don't have to be perfect, but we can help each other. For the first time in a long while, Toralla's eyes softened. She didn't speak, but the quiet connection between them felt real. She had always been so hard to read, so distant, but now, in this small room on a massive alien ship, they were two people, two allies, learning to understand each other. Toralla finally nodded. I will accept your help, human. Kyle smiled. I'm glad to hear it. And if you ever need help with anything else, anything at all, I'll be here. We're in this together. Toralla looked at him for a long time, and for a brief moment, Kyle thought he saw something like warmth in her expression. The silence between them stretched on for a few seconds, and then Toralla stood up, her usual warrior confidence returning. Now, we rest. Tomorrow, we will train again. Kyle stood too, stretching his arms. You're not going to get any better if you keep pushing yourself too hard. Then I will need your help, she replied. You will teach me how to relax. He laughed, but there was no mockery in it. That's something I can definitely help with. As they both returned to the bed for the night, the room felt a little less cramped. Toralla lay down next to him, her warmth a comforting presence. You'll be fine, Toralla, Kyle said quietly. You're stronger than you know. I will be, she replied softly. I believe you. And for the first time in a long while, Kyle felt like maybe, just maybe, they would both be okay. The days aboard the Valkyrian had begun to blend together for Kyle. His mornings were filled with training alongside Tirala, learning strange combat techniques and the ways of the core empire. Though he wasn't becoming a warrior anytime soon, he had gained confidence in himself. Every day felt like a new challenge, and he was learning to face them head-on. It wasn't just the physical training that had changed. Over time, his relationship with Tirala had evolved from awkward roommates to something more solid, more reliable. They shared stories, sometimes about their homes, sometimes about their pasts, and although they still had moments of cultural misunderstanding, they had begun to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. But that morning, something was different. The Valkyrian shook. Kyle grabbed the edge of his bunk, trying to keep his balance as the ship's alarms blared overhead. Tirala, who had been up before him, moved quickly, already pulling on her armor. Her movements were precise, automatic. "We are under attack," she said, her voice cold with focus. "Get to the command center." "Wait. What? Why?" "I don't." "There is no time." Tirala interrupted, strapping her weapons in place. "The ship is under threat. Move." Kyle jumped out of bed and ran after her. They hurried down the narrow hallways of the ship, passing confused crew members who were scrambling to respond to the emergency. Kyle's heart raced in his chest. He had never been in a real fight. This was nothing like the training sessions Tirala had pushed him through. The two of them reached the command center, a large room full of alien officers and technicians. The space was filled with the low hum of energy shields and the sharp sounds of communication from other parts of the ship. "What's going on?" Kyle asked, trying to catch his breath. Tirala's eyes were already scanning the data on the wall. "Pirates," she said grimly. "They've boarded the ship. They want to steal valuable resources." Kyle didn't understand how pirates could get so close to such a powerful ship, but there was no time to ask more questions. He watched as Tirala moved toward the weapons station, taking control of a nearby energy cannon. "Stay here, human," she ordered as she prepared to fight. "I will protect you." "No," Kyle said quickly, his voice firm despite the fear building in his chest. "I'm not staying behind. If you're going out there, I'm with you." Tirala paused and turned to look at him. There was no surprise in her expression, only a flicker of approval. "Very well," she said. "Stay close." The two of them made their way toward the airlock. Kyle's mind raced as they passed through the corridors. He could hear the sounds of distant blasts and shouting, the heavy footfalls of alien boots against metal floors. They were getting closer to the source of the chaos. The airlock door hissed open, and they stepped into a long hallway that led to the ship's docking bay. Kyle's stomach churned as they approached the area, now under heavy guard. He could see a handful of warriors already preparing for battle, but it was clear the pirates had gained a foothold. "Stay behind me," Tirala said. She stepped forward, her posture tense, her weapon ready. Kyle nodded and followed her. He had no weapons of his own, nothing but his wits and a willingness to follow her lead. That had to be enough. As they entered the docking bay, the sound of blaster fire filled the air. The pirates were armed, but they were disorganized. They had clearly underestimated the Valkyrians' defenses. "Hold your position," one of the pirate leaders shouted, his voice gruff. Tirala's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene. "I will clear the way," she muttered. Without warning, she rushed forward, her powerful legs pushing her forward in a blur. She charged the pirates, her weapon raised, striking with deadly precision. Kyle watched in awe as she moved, fast, strong, and with a calm focus that made her seem unstoppable. He hesitated for a moment, watching her take on the pirates, and then he forced himself to follow. He might not have a weapon, but he could help in other ways. Kyle grabbed a nearby crate and used it to shield himself as he moved closer to the action. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he had to do something. Tirala fought fiercely, her every strike landing with a terrifying power. The pirates were no match for her, though there were more of them than he had expected. The sound of weapons clashing filled the air, and Kyle could see the tension on Tirala's face. She was fighting with all her might, but they were outnumbered. A pirate lunged at her, and Tirala blocked the blow just in time, but the force sent her stumbling backward. Kyle didn't think. He ran forward and grabbed a fallen blaster from one of the defeated pirates. Without fully understanding what he was doing, Kyle aimed the weapon and fired. The shot hit its mark, sending another pirate flying backward in a blast of energy. Tirala glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Not bad," she said, sounding almost impressed. But there was no time for more words. The pirates were regrouping, and the battle was far from over. They fought together, side by side. Tirala leading the charge and Kyle doing his best to support her with whatever he could find. The battle was intense, but slowly the tide began to turn. The pirates were forced to retreat, their morale shattered by the resistance they hadn't expected. As the last of them fled, Kyle lowered his weapon, his hands trembling. He couldn't believe what had just happened. They had won. Tirala stood beside him, breathing heavily but looking unfazed. "You did well, human." Kyle nodded, his voice still shaky. "I guess I wasn't as useless as I thought." "You are not useless," Tirala replied. "You showed bravery. That is what matters." Kyle smiled. "I just did what I had to." The two of them stood there in the aftermath, the sounds of battle fading. For a moment, it was just the two of them, warrior and human, standing side by side, having faced danger and come out victorious. But Kyle knew this wasn't the last challenge they would face, and as he glanced at Tirala, he realized something. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The aftermath of the pirate attack had left the Valkyrian crew shaken, but the ship's defenses and teamwork had proven stronger than any enemy. The pirates, though skilled, had underestimated the might of the Valkyrian and its warriors. Kyle had never been in a real fight before, and now that it was over, he felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. He had survived. And more than that, he had fought alongside Tirala. She was a force of nature, calm and powerful, like a storm that you didn't see coming until it was already over. And he had been right there with her. In the aftermath, as the ship returned to normal, Kyle found himself standing in the same small room with Tirala once again. The day's events still felt unreal, but there they were, side by side. Tirala had removed her armor, and her serious expression had softened, though not by much. She was still the warrior she had always been. But for the first time, Kyle noticed the flicker of something else, behind her eyes, something that wasn't just duty. "You were incredible out there," Kyle said, sitting on the bed, rubbing his sore arms. "I've never seen anyone fight like that before." Tirala didn't look at him immediately. She took a deep breath, then turned to face him. "You did well, human," she replied, her tone almost begrudging, though it was clear she meant it. "You fought with courage." Kyle smiled, though it was a little shaky. "I think I just did what you taught me." Tirala nodded slowly. "You have learned much in a short time. That is the strength of humans." Kyle was still processing everything. He'd never expected to be in a situation like this, not just on an alien ship, but fighting pirates and surviving a battle he was a part of. But as he sat there, in the same tiny room that had once seemed suffocating, Kyle realized something. Despite all the strangeness, despite all the awkwardness, he wasn't as alone as he had been when he first boarded the ship. Tirala had become more than just his warrior roommate. She had become his partner. The thought hit him harder than he expected. It was like everything that had happened, the awkward sleeping arrangements, the training, the battles, had led them to this point. They weren't just two beings stuck in a tiny room. They were allies. They were stronger together. "So, now what?" Kyle asked, breaking the silence. Tirala looked at him with her usual steady gaze. "Now we rest," she said simply, "and wait for the next challenge." Kyle let out a breath. "Well, I don't know about you, but I could use a break." Farala stood still for a moment, as if considering something. Then, with her usual seriousness, she said, "The bed is small, but we are both capable of resting here." Kyle couldn't help but laugh. "I thought you might say that." Tarala raised an eyebrow. "You do not wish to sleep here?" Kyle hesitated, his heart beating a little faster than usual. "It's not that. It's just, well, things feel different now, after everything that happened." Tarala walked over to the bed and sat beside him. "We have shared much in this small space," she said quietly. "But it is not the space that matters. It is the trust we have built." Kyle looked at her, noticing how different she seemed now. She wasn't just the warrior who slept on top of him anymore. She was someone who had fought beside him, someone who had shared in the danger and the victories. They had become more than just roommates. "I get that," Kyle said softly. "I never expected this to be so meaningful. But I guess in the end, it's not about the room. It's about the people in it." Tarala nodded slowly, as if pondering his words. "You understand now. You are more than a human to me. You are a companion." Kyle's heart skipped a beat. "I think I understand that too." A moment of quiet passed between them. Kyle wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew it was important. They had both changed in ways they hadn't expected. After a few moments, Tarala lay down beside him, just like before. There was no tension, no awkwardness, just the quiet comfort of two beings who had become more than they were at the beginning. "This time," Tarala said, her voice softer than usual, "we will rest, knowing that we are not alone." Kyle smiled, feeling the weight of her words. She had always been the warrior, the protector, but now, in this tiny room, they were partners. They had been through something together, something that had formed an unspoken bond between them. "Yeah," Kyle said quietly, "I'm not alone anymore." They lay there in silence for a while, the sounds of the ship's engine humming softly in the background. The room was still small, and Tarala's weight still rested on him, but it didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. It felt right. As the lights dimmed, Kyle closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of Tarala beside him. He wasn't sure what the future would bring. More battles, more challenges, more adventures. But whatever happened, he knew one thing for sure. They would face it together.